Bibliophiles of the internet. Today I'm here to do the end of the year book tag. It absolutely hurts my brain to think about how we have less than 2 months left of 2023. It makes no sense. Typically, I think you're supposed to do this tag a bit earlier in the year, maybe at the start of the final quarter, but I'm doing it now, and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do to stop me. I will link the original video down below if I can find it, and all of the questions will be included in the description as well. Also, shout out to Jen the Librarian, whose video reminded me that this tag exists. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically about end of the year reading plans, looking ahead to books in the new year, that type of thing, so let's just get into it. Number 1, are there any books you've started this year that you still need to finish? Even though I personally have nothing against this practice, I usually don't start books and then put them aside for later. However, there is one book I actually started last year in 2022 and have been meaning to restart and finish by the end of 2023, and that is A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. If you've been around for the last couple of years, you've heard me talk about this book in this specific capacity before. This is literally a Royai AU romantasy, and Royai, for the uneducated, for the uncultured, is a ship from Fullmetal Alchemist that, for me, has been an extremely foundational experience in ways I can't even fully explain. Do you see my face right now just thinking about Royai? It's so embarrassing. I've said it before, but this book is a Jewish-inspired YA fantasy about this legendary half-moon hunt to track down this mythical creature that's the last of its kind. The main character is a sharpshooter and hopes that if she can win this hunt, it will bring back her wayward mother, but only teams of 2 are eligible to enter, and she finds herself in need of an alchemist. Again, you may have heard this story before, but I checked out the audiobook from my library back in, I want to say summer of 2022, and I absolutely could not gel with the audiobook narration for whatever reason. So I returned the audiobook unfinished and swore to myself that I would later restart the book and read it physically, which I still haven't done and would still love to do by the end of 2023. Number 2, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? Besides the fact that this is an aggressively Northern Hemisphere-centric question, it always stumps me a bit because it reads to me as one of 2 things. Either you have like a favorite fall book that you always reread and revisit to officially christen the fall reading season, or you intentionally find a book that feels like a fall book to you, and once you read it, that's when the season starts. Neither of those scenarios are true for me. I am of the mind that any book you read in fall is a fall book. But to be a good sport, I went through the books I've read in the most recent months and tried to find one that felt fitting for this. And let me just say, it was tough because the genres I read are all over the place. That said, I feel like I unofficially kicked off my fall reading with I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me by Jameson Shea. And that feels especially fitting because the book I read right before that was Beating Heart Baby by Leo Min, which is a quintessentially summer book if I've ever come across one. So it's almost like that was my send-off to summer, and then I Feed Her to the Beast was my welcome into fall, even though I don't need a seasonal excuse to read creepy books. Again, in a nutshell, I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me is a queer young adult horror book about Laure, who is a Black American ballerina formerly studying ballet in France. Because she's constantly overlooked in favor of her peers, she goes down to the catacombs and makes a deal with a primordial river of blood in order to become a masterful dancer and obtain this magical power of undeniable influence. It's dark, it's twisted, it's delicious, it's the kind of story that just revels in the main character's freedom to be unapologetically dangerous and monstrous. It is fantastic. Number 3, is there a new release you're still waiting for? I have a few quick answers for this. Some of them might be out by the time you see this, but as of filming this, they're not out yet, and some might still be on the horizon. But first and foremost is We Are the Crisis by Cadwell Turnbull. This is the sequel to No Gods, No Monsters, which I think I read back in February, and holy shit, is that book incredible. It's like if urban fantasy, supernatural fiction, and cosmic horror had a baby. If you love N.K. Jemisin, you should be reading Cadwell Turnbull, which really says everything, because that is the ultimate selling point. So yeah, the Convergence saga continues this month with We Are the Crisis, and to say I'm excited to read it is an understatement. Another book I actually have pre-ordered is Dark Air by C.S. Packet. This is the sequel to Dark Rise, their young adult historical fantasy debut, which I had such a great time listening to back when it came out in 2021. I definitely remember the broad strokes of book one, especially if you've read it. There are some things you simply cannot forget, but I think I would have to revisit book one before diving into Dark Air. But honestly, the audiobook is so top tier that I would not mind one bit. And the two December releases that are top of mind for me personally are Heartstopper Volume 5, of course, that's gonna be huge, and Lucero by Mayo Montaigne is finally coming out, the third and final book in the Nocturna trilogy. I have loved both books in that trilogy so far. It is a criminally underrated Latina high fantasy series, and I cannot wait to see how it concludes. Number 4, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? Listen, I am a Libra through and through. I don't like committing to things this far in advance, which is wild to say because it's not even that much advanced, but I still don't like it. Please don't hold me to any of these because I will absolutely McLose it. I actually went back to my mid-year check-in tag, which has a similar question, and I was pleasantly surprised to see I had crossed 2 books off that list. I did read Beating Heart Baby, I did read The Beautiful Ones, so the first book I'd have to say that both overlaps with that question and this video is, once again, A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. We all know I need to read it. There's nothing else to say about that. I am planning to read my arc of OK Cupid by Mason Deaver, which I got recently. I think I'm not so unconsciously saving it for the upcoming round of the Queer Lit Readathon, so I'm actually pretty confident that I'm gonna read that one. Now, I have not forgotten that I would still like to read at least the first book, if not both books, in the Teixclan duology by Arkady Martine, so I'm still holding that intention somewhere in my heart. But I've also recently been overtaken by the urge to read something by Peter Jelly Clark. I have 2 of the novellas set in the Dead Djinn universe, and I believe I have A Master of Djinn as an ebook as well, so it's feasible to read those novellas and also read A Master of Djinn, which is like a queer steampunk mystery and so aggressively up my alley, so we'll see what happens. Number 5, is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? First of all, I don't rank my favorite books, so there's not going to be like an ultimate winner, number 1 favorite book. And again, every time I watch this tag or do this tag, this question throws me for a loop a bit because I don't have what I'm going to read for the rest of the year set in stone at this point. So pretty much everything's a surprise. In the short term, I would love to read Against the Loveless World by Susan Abelhawa, which comes very highly recommended and I've heard really great things. I also got approved to take part in a book tour for Kingdom of Without by Andrea Tang, which seems like the perfect storm of comp titles that absolutely speak to me specifically. It's a cyberpunk urban fantasy story set in an alternate Beijing, inspired by Les Mis, and allegedly perfect for fans of Six of Crows and Full Metal Alchemist. I do enjoy all of those things. I will say I far prefer Crooked Kingdom to Six of Crows, but I know what the marketers were going for there, but I genuinely had not heard of this one before I got the sign-up email, so I'm going into it with an open mind, but also some pretty high hopes. Number 6, have you already started making reading plans for next year? I mentioned earlier how I'm not one to commit to plans very far in advance, but of course I do have 2024 releases I am excited for. Do I consider those to be reading plans? That's a separate conversation. But in the spirit of the question, I'm very excited for The Tusks of Extinction by Ray Naylor, which is his new book. He wrote The Mountain in the Sea. I'm also excited for a bunch of queer releases like Most Ardently by Gabe Cole-Novoa, which is a trans reimagining of Pride and Prejudice. Of course, I'll be reading Canto Contigo by the Johnny Gazavia. We just got a cover release for The Seventh Veil of Salome by Silvia Moreno Garcia, so obviously I'm psyched out of my mind for that release. I forgot to include this one in my notes, but I'm also just now remembering that we got a cover reveal recently for Caro de Robertis' upcoming book, and I don't remember the title, but I believe it's a queer retelling of Eros and Psyche's myth, I want to say. So that's gonna be life-shattering. Y'all know how I feel about Caro de Robertis. The other day I was randomly thinking about how much I love Morgan Talty. His collection, Night of the Living Rez, is top-notch, and his short story in Never Whistle at Night was exceptional. So I looked him up serendipitously, and his debut novel is coming out in 2024. It's called Fire Exit, and I cannot wait. I'll just mention a couple more. Again, top of mind for me is Crown of Starlight by Kate Corain. This was comped at one point to Gideon and the Ninth, and it's like a steamy, snarky, queer space opera that reimagines the myth of Ariadne and Dionysus. So I'm very much sold. I'm also counting down the days to A Crane Among Wolves by June Her, which is a romance set in historical Korea during the Joseon era, and it's about a young girl who's trying to save her older sister from the cruel king and falls for the crown prince in the process. I have to cut myself off there. There are simply too many amazing books coming out literally all the time. Again, those are not necessarily reading plans per se, but they're all books I'm looking forward to in 2024. So that is the end of the year book tag. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you added some things to your TBR. Not that any of us need it. Feel free to share your own responses to these questions or tell me about your 2024 reading plans if you know them down below in the comments. That is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, educate yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the flip side of the page.